Can you pretend to be my date for a day? The poor woman asked a single dad. What he said next changed everything. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. Wyatt Freeman was flat on his back under a Honda Civic at 3:30 on a Friday afternoon in November, with grease on his hands and a wrench that wouldn't cooperate when he heard the bell above his shop door chime. And he figured it was just his parts delivery running late again. So he didn't even bother sliding out until he heard a woman's voice say, "Excuse me, is anyone here?" And there was something in her tone that sounded like she was either about to cry or possibly throw up, or maybe both at the same time. He rolled out from under the car, wiping his hands on a rag that was already filthy, and looked up to find a woman in a Maplewood Fresh Mart uniform, standing in the middle of his auto shop, clutching her car keys so tight her knuckles were white. And he vaguely recognized her as the cashier from the supermarket who always smiled when she scanned his groceries. But right now, she looked like her entire world was falling apart. "Can I help you, ma'am? You having car trouble?" Wyatt asked in that calm voice he used when customers were panicking about check engine lights. And the woman started pacing back and forth like she was having an argument with herself out loud. "This is insane. I can't just ask a stranger this. This is completely crazy. I should just leave and figure something else out." And Wyatt just stood there holding his wrench, completely confused about what was happening in his shop right now. "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need me to call someone for you?" He tried again, and that's when she stopped pacing and looked at him with these desperate brown eyes and just blurted out the most bizarre question Wyatt had heard in his entire 35 years on this planet. "Can you pretend to be my date for a day?" She said it so fast the words almost ran together, and Wyatt genuinely thought he'd misheard her, because there was no way a random woman just walked into Freeman's auto repair and asked him to fake date her. But she was staring at him waiting for an answer, and he was still holding a wrench, like that was somehow going to help this situation make sense. "I'm sorry, what?" Wyatt said. And the woman took a shaky breath and started talking at approximately 100 miles per hour, explaining that her name was Isla Chen, and she worked at the supermarket, and her boss, Mrs. Duncan, had apparently told corporate 8 months ago that Isla was engaged to some wonderful guy to make her seem stable during layoffs. And Isla had played along thinking it would blow over, except now corporate was coming tomorrow for Employee Family Day, and they wanted to meet everyone's families, including Isla's completely fictional fiancé. And Mrs. Duncan had said, "Just find a nice young man to bring. It'll be fine." Like that was easy. "If I show up alone, I'm done. I'll be exposed as a liar. My boss will be humiliated in front of corporate, and I'll definitely get fired. And I can't lose this job because my parents are counting on me to help with my dad's medication bills." And Isla was talking so fast she was barely breathing, and Wyatt's brain was trying to catch up with all this information while also processing that this woman was asking him, a complete stranger, to commit fraud, basically. "Why me, though?" "You don't even know me," Wyatt said, because that seemed like a reasonable question. And Isla laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Because you're literally the only single guy in this entire town who isn't either related to me or dating someone already or a total creep. I've seen you at the store with your daughter, and you're always nice, and you don't gossip, and honestly, you just seem like a decent person who might possibly help someone who's completely desperate." Wyatt was about to say something. He wasn't even sure what, when the door to his back office flew open and his 7-year-old daughter Nora came running out with her blonde ponytail bouncing and her Superman backpack still strapped to her back. "Dad, I finished all my math homework and I didn't even need help this time," she announced proudly. And then she spotted Isla, and her entire face lit up like someone had just told her Christmas was coming early. "Oh, hi! Are you my dad's girlfriend? Finally! I've been asking him to get one like forever." Wyatt felt his face go completely red, and he stammered, "No, sweetie, she's just a customer who needs help with something." But Nora was already walking over to Isla with her hands on her hips, looking very serious for a second grader. "My dad is really, really good at helping people. He fixes everyone's cars even when they can't pay sometimes. And he says helping people is the most important thing you can do, so he'll totally help you with whatever you need." And Nora said it with such complete confidence that Wyatt wanted to both hug her and also explain that this particular situation was way more complicated than changing someone's oil. Isla looked at Nora and then at Wyatt, and her eyes were filling up with tears. "I can pay you. I have $200 saved up. It's yours. I just need you to show up tomorrow afternoon for like 4 hours and pretend we're engaged and eat some potato salad, and then we never have to see each other again. Please, I'm literally begging you right now." Wyatt's brain was screaming that this was the most ridiculous request anyone had ever made, and he should absolutely say no, because this was fraud and lying and all kinds of wrong. But then he looked at this woman who was clearly terrified of losing her job, and he thought about how his late wife Claire used to tell him he was too soft for his own good because he could never say no when someone really needed help. And Nora was standing there looking at him with those big blue eyes that were exactly like her mom's, waiting to see if he was going to practice what he preached about helping people. "Keep your $200, Wyatt heard himself say, and Isla's head snapped up with hope all over her face. "I'll do it. But if we're gonna pull this off, we need to get our story straight. Because if your boss is as nosy as you're making her sound, she's gonna ask questions and we better have answers that match." Isla's entire body sagged with relief, and she actually started crying right there in his auto shop. "Oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much. I promise I'll make this as easy as possible." And Wyatt was already mentally going through his schedule, trying to figure out how he was going to explain to his mom that he was fake dating someone for a corporate event. They agreed to meet that night at Wyatt's place to rehearse their fake relationship story, and Nora insisted she was coming to the event tomorrow because if you guys are pretend engaged, then I need to be there to make it look real. Plus, I can tell everyone how much you love each other. And Isla actually laughed for the first time since walking in. Said that was fine. Fiance definitely meet the kids so it would help sell the story. As Isla was leaving, she turned back in the doorway and asked, "Why are you really doing this? You don't know me at all." And Wyatt leaned against his workbench and gave her an honest answer. "Because I know what it's like to need a job and be scared of losing it. And because you were brave enough to ask for help when you were drowning, most people are too proud to do that, and they go under. At least you're fighting." Isla looked at him like he just said something profound instead of just basic human decency. And after she left, Nora came and stood next to him and said, "Dad, she's really pretty and she seems nice. Can she be your actual girlfriend after tomorrow?" And Wyatt ruffled her hair and said, "It doesn't work like that, honey." But Nora just grinned and said, "It should." That night, Isla showed up at Wyatt's house at 7, and they sat at his kitchen table with notebooks like they were cramming for the world's weirdest exam, trying to build a fake relationship history that would hold up under questioning from nosy coworkers and corporate executives. They decided they met at the supermarket when he was buying groceries, and he asked her out. They'd been dating 8 months, which matched Mrs. Duncan's timeline, and they got completely stuck on the proposal story until Nora, who was supposed to be in bed, yelled down the stairs, "It should be romantic like when Superman saves Lois Lane, and they just know they're supposed to be together." And both adults cracked up laughing. Somewhere around 9 o'clock, after they'd covered favorite foods and colors and all the basic stuff couples should know, Isla told him about putting herself through community college while working full-time and sending money home for her dad's heart medication. And Wyatt found himself sharing that he'd grown up in foster care and met his wife Claire when he was 23, and she'd seen something in him nobody else had. And they had Nora when he was 28, and Claire passed away from an illness when Nora was only 3 years old, so he'd been doing the single dad thing for about 4 years now. "So you've been raising her completely alone this whole time?" Isla asked quietly, and Wyatt nodded. "Yeah, hardest thing I ever did, but Nora's the best thing that ever happened to me. She keeps me going even on the days I don't want to get out of bed." Isla reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "She's really lucky to have you." And Wyatt felt his throat get tight. "I'm lucky to have her, and honestly, I'm lucky you walked into my shop today, even if the circumstances are completely insane." As Isla was leaving around 9:30, she said, "See you tomorrow, fake fiancé?" And Wyatt replied, "See you tomorrow. And Isla, we got this, I promise." And after she drove away, Nora appeared at the top of the stairs in her princess pajamas and said, "Dad, I really, really like her. She's nice and pretty, and she laughs at your jokes even when they're not that funny. Can she please be your real girlfriend after this is over?" Wyatt scooped up his daughter and carried her back to bed, and Nora said something that made his heart stop. "Mom would like her. I can tell. You always tell me Mom used to say we should help people and be happy, and Isla needs help, and she makes you smile. So Mom would totally approve. And Wyatt had to blink really hard because his kid barely ever mentioned Claire, and when she did, it always hit him sideways. He tucked Nora in and she whispered, "Happy tears are okay, Dad," like she could read his mind. And after he closed her door, he stood in the hallway, thinking that tomorrow was supposed to be 4 hours of pretending to be in love with a stranger and then back to normal life. So why did the idea of never seeing Isla again after tomorrow make his chest feel weirdly tight? And maybe his daughter was right. Maybe Claire would approve. And that thought felt like permission he didn't even know he'd been waiting for. Saturday morning hit, and Wyatt picked up Isla in his freshly washed truck at 10:30, and Nora was buckled in the back seat, practically vibrating with excitement, wearing her favorite purple dress, because she'd announced at breakfast that if she was going to help her dad pretend to be in love, she needed to look fancy for it. Isla climbed into the passenger seat wearing a simple blue dress she'd borrowed from her younger sister, and she looked nervous enough to pass out, kept running through their cover story under her breath like she was preparing for a test she couldn't afford to fail. "We met at the supermarket. You asked me out 3 times before I said yes. We've been together 8 months. Your favorite color is blue because of your truck." And Wyatt reached over and took her hand without even thinking about it and said, "Isla, breathe. I got you. We're going to be fine." And the hand-holding felt way too natural for two people who'd known each other approximately 18 hours. The Maplewood Fresh Mart parking lot was completely decorated with balloons and tables, and one of those corporate banners that said, "Celebrating our family." And there were easily 75 people already there, employees and their families scattered around eating from the buffet tables and playing lawn games. And Wyatt felt Isla's hand tighten on his as they walked toward the crowd. Mrs. Duncan spotted them immediately and came rushing over. She was exactly how Isla had described her. 60-something with big hair and an even bigger personality, and her face lit up like she just won the lottery when she saw Wyatt. "Isla, oh my goodness gracious, is this him? Is this your fiancé? And who is this absolutely precious angel?" Mrs. Duncan was talking at volume 11, and Nora stepped forward with her hand stuck out exactly like Wyatt had taught her and said, "I'm Nora Freeman. Wyatt's my dad. It's very nice to meet you, ma'am. That's a really pretty necklace you're wearing." And Mrs. Duncan literally clutched her chest like her heart couldn't take the cuteness. "Oh, Isla, you didn't tell me he had such a polite daughter, and look at you. You're even more handsome than she described." Mrs. Duncan was grilling Wyatt with questions before he could even say hello, wanted to know what he did for work and how they met and all the details. And Wyatt started with their rehearsed story about meeting in the cereal aisle, but then something made him deviate from the script. She had this smile that just completely stopped me in my tracks. I asked her out right there by the Cheerios, and she shot me down flat, told me she didn't date customers. So I kept coming back every single week buying the same box of cereal I don't even like, until she finally agreed to get coffee with me just to make me stop pestering her. And Isla's head whipped around to stare at him because that was absolutely not the story they'd practiced. But Mrs. Duncan was eating it up, said, "Oh, how romantic. Persistence. I love a man who knows what he wants." Isla jumped in, improvising right along with him. He was very persistent, kept showing up every Saturday morning at 9:15, like clockwork, and I finally said yes just to see if he was for real or just bored. And Wyatt grinned at her. Turns out I was very for real. Best decision I ever made was buying cereal I hate for 2 months straight. And they were riffing off each other like they'd been doing this for years instead of making it up on the spot. And Mrs. Duncan wandered off to greet other people, leaving them standing there holding hands and trying not to laugh. The corporate VP, Mr. Brennan, came over about 20 minutes later. He was all business in khakis and a polo shirt with the company logo, shook Wyatt's hand and asked what he did for a living. And when Wyatt said he owned an auto repair shop, Mr. Brennan nodded approvingly and said, "Good, honest work. We need more young people willing to work with their hands these days. You found yourself a good one, Isla." The event had all these couple activities planned, and Wyatt and Isla got roped into participating in a 3-legged race where their legs got tied together with a bandana. And they were stumbling and laughing, and Isla nearly took them both down twice, but somehow they actually won. And when they crossed the finish line, they hugged, and it lasted just a beat too long. long enough that Wyatt could smell her shampoo and feel her heart racing against his chest. Nora was screaming from the sidelines, "That's my dad! That's my Isla! They're the best!" And other employees were clapping and cheering, and for a second Wyatt forgot this whole thing was fake because it felt so incredibly real. Then came couples trivia, and they should have absolutely bombed it because they'd only known each other a day. But somehow they kept getting questions right. "What's your partner's favorite food?" And they both said pizza at the same time. "What's your partner's biggest fear?" And Wyatt said without hesitating, "Letting people down and not being enough." And Isla's eyes got shiny because how did this stranger already see her so clearly? They won the trivia too, and Mrs. Duncan announced over the microphone, "Look at our lovebirds, so in sync. This is what true love looks like, folks." And Isla felt her stomach twist with guilt because all these nice people thought they were witnessing something real when it was all just an elaborate performance. Around 2 in the afternoon, Isla excused herself to use the bathroom, and on her way back, she overheard two of her coworkers talking by the drink table. One of them said, "Did you see Isla's fiancé? He's gorgeous in the way he looks at her." "I'm so jealous," and the other one replied, "I know, right? Single dad mechanic who clearly worships the ground she walks on. She hit the jackpot." And Isla had to duck around the corner because she felt like she was going to be sick because none of it was real. This man didn't worship her. He was just being kind enough to help a desperate stranger. And tomorrow he'd go back to his life and she'd go back to hers, and that would be that. Nora spent the entire event holding Isla's hand and introducing her to other kids. "This is my dad's fiancée, Isla. She's going to be my stepmom soon. Isn't she pretty?" And one little boy said, "You're so lucky. My stepmom is mean." And Nora replied very seriously, "Isla's not mean. She's the best. She already loves my dad so much. I can tell by the way she smiles at him." And Isla felt like the worst person on the planet lying to this sweet kid who just wanted her dad to be happy. Around 3 o'clock, Wyatt found Isla standing alone near the parking lot, looking like she was going to cry. And he walked over and said gently, "Hey, you okay? We're almost done. You pulled it off perfectly." But Isla shook her head, and her voice came out tight and stressed. "This was a huge mistake, Wyatt. Nora thinks this is real. All these coworkers think we're actually in love. All these people are good people, and I'm lying to every single one of them, and I feel like absolute garbage." Wyatt started to say, "You're just doing what you have to do to keep your job." But Isla cut him off. "That doesn't make it right. I'm a liar, and I dragged you into being a liar too, and I just—" But before she could finish, Mrs. Duncan's voice came crackling over the microphone, calling everyone's attention to the main pavilion. "Before we wrap up today, I want to recognize some very special people. Isla Chen has been with Maplewood Fresh Mart for 6 wonderful years. She's one of our hardest workers, and she's getting married soon to this lovely man. Let's give them a big round of applause." And everyone started clapping, and Isla wanted the ground to open up and swallow her whole. But Mrs. Duncan wasn't done. "And I'm thrilled to announce that corporate has approved my recommendation to promote Isla to assistant manager effective immediately. Congratulations, honey, you earned this." The applause got louder and people were coming up to congratulate her, and Isla was smiling and saying thank you. But inside she was completely panicking because this promotion was huge. More money and better hours and actual benefits. But it was all based on a lie about being engaged to a man she'd met yesterday. After the event finally ended around 4, Wyatt drove Isla home with Nora quiet in the back seat, eyes closed like she was sleeping from all the excitement. And the silence in the truck was heavy until Isla finally said, "I can't accept that promotion. There's no way. It's not right." Wyatt glanced over at her confused. "What are you talking about? You absolutely earned that? Mrs. Duncan said you've been there 6 years busting your butt." But Isla shook her head hard. "I earned it by lying. They promoted me because they think I'm this stable, engaged woman with a perfect family. It's fraud, Wyatt. It's not real." Wyatt pulled over into a parking lot and turned to face her. And before his brain could stop his mouth, he said, "So make it not a lie." And Isla stared at him like he'd just spoken a foreign language. "What?" And Wyatt ran his hand through his hair because he couldn't believe he just said that out loud. "Nothing? Forget I said anything? I don't know what I'm talking about. But Isla wasn't letting it go. No, what did you mean make it not a lie? Explain that to me, because I'm really confused right now. Wyatt took a deep breath and just went for it, because apparently today was the day he made completely insane decisions. Today was supposed to be me helping you out for 4 hours, and then we go back to being strangers, right? Except Isla, I had more fun today than I've had in 3 solid years, and Nora hasn't been that happy and excited about anything in so long. I can't even remember the last time. And when we were doing that couples trivia, and you knew my favorite color was blue, and you laughed at my stupid jokes, and you held Nora's hand like she was already yours. It didn't feel like we were pretending. It felt real. Isla's eyes went huge, and White kept going, because he was already in this deep. I'm not saying we should run off and get married tomorrow. That would be completely nuts. We barely know each other. But what if we just kept doing this? Like actually dating for real? See where it goes naturally. Because I haven't thought about anyone the way I'm thinking about you since Claire, and that terrifies me. But the idea of never seeing you again after today terrifies me way more. Isla looked like she couldn't breathe. Wyatt, you don't owe me anything. You already helped me more than I had any right to ask. And Wyatt reached over and took her hand. This isn't about owing you. This is about the fact that you walked into my shop yesterday and asked the craziest question I've ever heard. And somehow in 24 hours, you made me feel something I thought I'd never feel again. And maybe I'm reading this completely wrong, and you think I'm insane, but I had to say it. They were staring at each other in the front seat of his truck, and the air felt electric. And then Nora's voice came from the back seat where she'd apparently been awake the whole time. Oh my gosh, Dad, just kiss her already. This is taking forever. And I'm starving back here. And both adults jumped and then started laughing. And Wyatt looked at Isla and said quietly, "Can I kiss you? For real this time. Not for anyone watching, just because I really want to." And Isla nodded and whispered, "Please, yeah." And he leaned across the center console and kissed her soft and sweet and real. And Nora said, "Finally. Okay, now can we get pizza? Because I wasn't kidding about being starving." And they broke apart laughing. Monday morning, Isla walked into work feeling like she was floating on air because she and Wyatt had spent all day Sunday together with Nora, and it felt easy and right and perfect. But then Mrs. Duncan called her into the office looking serious, and Isla's stomach dropped straight to the floor, and Mrs. Duncan said, "Honey, I need to tell you something about the promotion. Corporate wants to do a quick profile piece for the company newsletter about our newest assistant manager. You know, meet the team kind of thing. And since I met your fiancé at Family Day, I mentioned him. They might reach out to include a quote from him about how proud he is of you. I hope that's okay." And Isla felt all the blood drain from her face because corporate was going to call Wyatt and ask about their engagement. And if he told the truth, she was completely done, fired for sure, and humiliated in front of everyone. And if he lied more, they were just digging themselves deeper and deeper into a hole they'd never climb out of. Isla absolutely sprinted to Freeman's Auto Repair on her lunch break Monday and found Wyatt underneath a Toyota, looking peaceful and completely unaware that their entire fake relationship was about to blow up in their faces. And she was talking before he even fully rolled out from under the car. "Corporate is doing a newsletter piece about my promotion, and they're going to call you for a quote about how proud you are of me. And if you say we just met 4 days ago, instead of being engaged for 8 months, the whole lie falls apart and I'm getting fired, and I don't know what to do." And the words came out so fast she had to gulp air when she finished. Wyatt stood up and wiped his hands on his coveralls, and the first thing he did was take both her hands in his and say in that calm, steady voice she was already starting to depend on, "Okay, first thing, breathe. Second thing, when are they calling?" And Isla shook her head frantically. "Could be any time this week. Mrs. Duncan said it was standard procedure. But Wyatt, we have to make a choice right now. Do we keep lying and dig ourselves deeper, or do we come clean and deal with whatever happens?" Wyatt looked at her for a long minute and then said something that made Isla's heart squeeze. "What do you want to do? This is your job, your life. I'll back whatever call you make, but it's got to be your decision." Isla felt tears starting because when was the last time someone let her make the choice instead of just telling her what to do? And she took a shaky breath and said, "I want to tell the truth. I can't build a real relationship with you on top of a foundation made of lies, even if it costs me the promotion I need to come clean. Wyatt smiled at her like she'd just said something that made him proud. Okay, then we do it together. We'll go talk to Mrs. Duncan tomorrow morning and tell her everything, and whatever happens after that, we'll figure it out. And Isla threw her arms around him right there in the auto shop and whispered, "Thank you for not thinking I'm crazy." And Wyatt hugged her back and said, "Oh, I definitely think you're crazy, but I like crazy. Crazy's working for me." That night, Isla was at Wyatt's house helping Nora with homework when Nora looked up from her spelling words and said, "So are you guys still getting fake married, or are you doing real married now?" With the kind of blunt 7-year-old honesty that cuts straight through adult nonsense. Wyatt tried to explain, "It's complicated, sweetheart," but Nora wasn't having it. "No, it's not complicated. You like Isla, right? And Isla, you like my dad. So just be together because you want to, not because of some dumb job stuff. That's what Dad says," Mom always used to say. "Do things because they make you happy, not because you have to." And Wyatt felt his breath catch, because that was absolutely something Claire used to say. Isla looked at Wyatt with wet eyes and squeezed his hand across the homework-covered table, and Nora went back to her spelling like she hadn't just dropped major wisdom on two adults who apparently needed a second grader to sort out their lives. Tuesday morning, Isla and Wyatt walked into Mrs. Duncan's office together, and Isla confessed the whole thing, how they'd only met 4 days ago, how the family day event was completely fake, how she was sorry for lying, and she'd resign if that's what needed to happen. And she was talking so fast trying to get it all out before she lost her nerve that she didn't notice Mrs. Duncan was smiling. When Isla finally ran out of words, Mrs. Duncan leaned back in her chair and said 4 words that made both of them freeze. "Honey, I already knew." And Isla's mouth literally fell open. "You what?" Mrs. Duncan laughed. "You think I've been managing employees for 30 years and can't tell when two people just met? You had to think about his favorite color at the trivia. Real fiancés don't have to think about that stuff, but here's what I did see. I saw a decent man take a whole day off work to help someone he barely knew, and I watched you two actually fall in love in real time right there at the potato salad table." Mrs. Duncan pulled out a paper from her desk and slid it across. It was Isla's promotion approval already signed and dated from the week before Family Day, and she said, "You got this promotion because you earned it with 6 years of busting your butt and perfect attendance and training every new employee we hired. The engagement had exactly nothing to do with it. I just used that story as my excuse to push corporate to move faster on approving it." Isla started crying right there in the office, and Mrs. Duncan handed her tissues and said, "So here's my real question. Are you two actually dating now for real?" And Wyatt and Isla looked at each other and both said, "Yes, ma'am," at the exact same time. And Mrs. Duncan clapped her hands together. "Then make it official eventually, and there's no lie to worry about. Now get out of my office. Some of us have actual work to do." Outside in the parking lot, Isla was still trying to process what just happened when Wyatt said, "I have a completely insane idea." And Isla laughed. "Crazier than fake dating?" And Wyatt took both her hands and said, "Way crazier. Marry me. Like for real eventually. I know we've only known each other 5 days, and this is absolutely nuts. But I haven't stopped thinking about you since you walked into my shop, and Nora's already planning what dress she's wearing to our wedding. And when Mrs. Duncan asked if we were really together, saying yes felt like the most honest thing I've said in years." Isla was crying and smiling at the same time. "Wyatt Freeman, are you seriously proposing to me in a supermarket parking lot after knowing me less than a week?" And Wyatt grinned. "I'm not proposing. I'm saying let's date for real and see where this goes. But also I'm pretty sure I already know where it's going, because you're it for me." Isla pulled him down and kissed him in front of the morning rush of shoppers and said, "Ask me again in a few months when we've actually done this properly." And Wyatt said, "Deal, but I'm already picking out a ring." And Isla laughed. "That's extremely presumptuous." And Wyatt said, "That's called being confident." And they stood there grinning at each other like complete idiots until Isla had to go start her shift. 5 months went by faster than either of them expected, and they dated for real. Family dinners with Nora, and meeting each other's families and all the normal relationship stuff. And Nora started calling Isla Mom around month 4, a middle ground she'd invented herself. and nobody corrected her because it felt right. Isla's promotion went through without a single hitch, and she was incredible at the job. Wyatt's business kept growing, and somewhere around February, Wyatt said, "I love you," during a completely random moment watching Nora's school play, and Isla said it back immediately. April 9th rolled around exactly 5 months after the Family Day event, and Wyatt told Isla to meet him at the Maplewood Fresh Mart parking lot. And when she got there, he was standing by his truck looking nervous. "Why are we here?" Isla asked, and Wyatt took her hand and said, "Because this parking lot is where we stopped lying and started living for real, and I wanted to do this here." And then he got down on one knee right there on the asphalt and pulled out a ring. "5 months ago, you asked me to pretend to be your date for 4 hours, and it was the best, worst acting I've ever done. Because I couldn't pretend even then. Isla Chen, will you marry me for real this time? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that taking a chance on a stranger with a crazy request was the best decision you ever made?" And Isla was already nodding and crying. "Yes, oh my gosh, yes!" And then Nora came running out from behind a parked car, holding a sign she'd made that said, "She said yes! I'm getting a mom! Finally!" And Isla scooped her up, spinning her around, and Nora said, "Can I call you mom for real now, not just in my head?" And Isla was sobbing, "Yeah, baby, absolutely, you can." And the whole parking lot erupted in cheers because Mrs. Duncan had organized a crowd. 8 months later, they got married in a small ceremony at the community center with Nora as the most serious flower girl in Vermont history. She had a clipboard and everything. And during the vows, Wyatt said, "You asked a stranger for help, and I said yes because I fix broken things. Turns out you fixed me right back." And Isla said, "You showed up when you didn't have to and turned my worst mistake into my best truth." At the reception, Nora ran up to them while they were dancing and said, "Mom, Dad, cake time." And Isla's heart swelled hearing that word said so naturally. And Wyatt pulled both his girls close and thought about how Claire would have loved Isla and how Nora was right all along. And they walked to the cake table together as the family they'd accidentally built from one desperate question and one impossible yes. Sometimes the craziest questions lead to the best answers. Isla needed a fake fiancé for 4 hours and found a husband for a lifetime. Wyatt said yes to a stranger and found the family he didn't know he was missing. They faked an engagement for a job and discovered a love that was real from the very start. If you've ever been scared to ask for help or scared to say yes when someone needs you, this is your sign. Take the chance. Ask the question. Say yes to the impossible request because you never know what 4 hours of pretending might turn into. Hit that subscribe button if this story reminded you that the best love stories start with the wildest requests, and sometimes falling in love happens the second you stop trying to fake it. Thanks for being here with us. And remember, sometimes the person you're pretending to love is actually the person you've been waiting for all along.